Hello, everybody. Carlos here. So this is the last tech brief for the year 2024. And I want to go over some of the main things that we saw this year as we were performing the tech briefs. The number one, as you guys may have already guessed, is going to be edge devices. We saw quite a bit of targeting of Ivanti, Fortinet, Palo Alto, and other types of devices out there. Now, when we look at the majority of these attacks, they were focusing mainly on the admin interfaces and the VPN service interfaces. Which leads me to the questions. Are we logging access to the admin interface, specifically logons, logoffs to those interfaces? Are we logging action like configuration changes? Are we also logging errors and warnings? Because as they're probing all of those different services and they're performing all of these actions, there's going to be quite a bit of errors and warnings and debugging messages. So have we configured that? Are we centralizing those logs? And that's very important because many of these devices, since they have limited storage and limited memory, they only keep only a couple of hours and sometimes a couple of days in most cases. Now, have you gone through a purple team exercises where you're building detections for these logs? If you are logging all of that, if not, I highly recommend that. As we're performing tabletop exercises and we ask these questions, we get a lot of customers actually don't have this types of scenarios included inside of their playbooks. So make sure that you include those and then you perform a tabletop exercise that would allow you to identify what if everybody is on the same page when it comes to dealing with this type of attack. Now, the next most common one that we have seen out there is business email compromise. This means that right now, given that our email, our file storage, when it comes to things like SharePoint and OneDrive are in the cloud, it means it's a lot more accessible to attacker to get into it and to be able to pilfer that information. And it's being abused very heavily. In fact, the majority of our incident response cases are related to business email compromise. Sadly, many don't have the right licensing level to be able to have the logs to answer the questions when an incident like this happen. Looking at you, Microsoft, that you're setting this as a feature that people have to pay for to get basic logging. But that's a rant for another day. So make sure that your log retention is not set to default, that all of your logs are being centralized for your cloud environment, specifically those actions that are concerned to you. And when it comes to licensing, I know licensing is expensive. So ensure that key personnel have the right licensing level for you to detect these types of attacks. This means also implementing the right controls, be able to thwart these types of attacks when it comes to an attacker coming in. This means enabling multi-factor authentication. If you're able to also implement passkey, implement it. That is even better than MFA. Attack also block users for being able to provision applications into their accounts. That is a very common attack. So we've been seeing that attackers have been going after MSPs. Once they go after MSPs, they'll go after SharePoint, they'll put in malicious files there or malicious file inside of OneDrive, and they'll use that as a fish to the customers of that organization. Or they'll look for partners and they'll do that from one side to the other. So everything looks proper. We also been seeing a heavy use of reverse proxies that allow them to be able to bypass multi-factor authentication, tricking the user to give them access and them obtaining a token. Also, this means that you should have in your playbook, how do you look for initial indicators of compromise? And also, what should you do if something like this happen? Have we ever revoked session tokens before? Yes, no. Do we know how to do it? Do we know how to pull out all of those logs and save them ahead of time so they don't get overridden if I don't have a SIM? All of that stuff, you should be performing tabletop exercises, updating playbooks, and going through those scenarios to be able to be ready for this type of incident. The next thing that I've seen so far is proof of concept code still dominate. Yeah. Proof of concept codes were used in mass exploitation throughout the year. We saw the case where proof of concept code was actually released even before even the patches came out. So this means that we need to have a solid process to identify when and what to patch, and also have a solid understanding of threat hunting. So we're able to look for the steps that attacker may have performed post-exploitation once they have abused one of these devices, because we're still playing catch up. We're still trying to patch the device itself and already exploit code and mask scan is happening out there. This is where having all of those detections in our SIM, having solid processes, and being able to articulate, plan, and execute a threat hunt when needed while the patching process is happening, it's so important for us. So those are kind of like the top 3 things that I wanted to cover. Very simple, very to the point, given everything that I've seen in the news. I know a lot of state actors, a lot of ransomware, and all of that. But I'm seeing this happen a lot more. All of those abuses of edge devices, management interfaces, business email compromise, and the importance of being able to have a more streamlined patching process and a threat hunting program in place to be able to aid in that patch management process. So again, I hope that you guys liked the video. Thank you for watching throughout the years, all of the different tech briefs that we put out here at TrustedSec. And I'll see you guys next year.